When we started traveling full-time, we honestly thought it was going to be a series of incredible Instagram moments. It turned out that the fantasy was a little different from the reality.
A lot different. When we originally imagined this full-time travel lifestyle, we thought it was going to be just like all the travel vlogs. We would have picture-perfect moments at all the iconic sites. We would be eating amazing local food every single day. And even our travel days would just be another fun part of the adventure.
Now, some of that did turn out to be true. We've had those once-in-a-lifetime experiences. We've gotten a taste of different cultures, but that accounts for a small percent of our experience as full-time travelers. The rest of the time is filled with all the planning and effort it takes to be a nomad.
If you're thinking of taking up this lifestyle, consider this video a reality check. So yes, you're going to have amazing experiences along the way, but just like we've discovered, it's not going to be all bucket list moments. There's a lot of real life in between.
But first, hello from Toronto. It's the perfect day to be talking about the challenges of full-time travel because it's time for us to head off again. We're finally getting out of the city for a much-needed break and bringing you along for the ride. We're packing up and heading to a small town on Georgian Bay, just a couple hours north of the city.
So if you're new around here, I'm Stephanie, this is Gillian. We retired early to travel full time. So if you're looking for more adventure, we've got a new video for you every Sunday.
We always wanted to be travelers. We've spent countless hours reading travel blogs, listening to podcasts, and watching travel vlogs. And we wanted that life. Or at least we wanted the life that we saw on the screen. We wanted to be these carefree adventurers hopping from one destination to the next.
So if only we didn't need to work for a living, we could just run away from it all and travel full time.
And then one day, we didn't need to work for a living. We had saved and invested enough that we had reached financial independence. The adventure could begin. It was going to be just like what we saw from our favorite travel bloggers, non-stop fun.
We really committed to being travelers. We gave up our home, we sold everything we owned, and we bought a one-way ticket to Europe. So at this point, we were really hoping our new lifestyle was going to work out because there was no turning back.
But we quickly discovered that it wasn't going to be quite as easy as the bloggers made it look.
We started our journey in the perfect place at the perfect time. It was Krakow, Poland. It was the peak of golden autumn. The temperature was just right. There was gorgeous scenery. The leaves were changing color. Our Instagram feed was feeling very happy. But then we arrived at our next stop, which was Lviv, Ukraine, and suddenly it was November and the temperature had dropped. We weren't prepared for it at all. So on our first day there, we tried doing a walking tour with our dogs, and they were just so cold, we had to stuff them inside our coats. They did get slightly warmer, but it wasn't a good situation for anyone. So this was our first taste of one of the constant challenges of nomad life. We're always having to chase the weather, especially if you want to stay on the same continent. In this case, it was Europe. We really didn't want to fly off to a whole new part of the world just to outrun the winter. But even the warmest parts of Europe are pretty cool and wet over the winter. So sure, you can head to Spain or Portugal, but only for 90 days if you're on a Schengen visa. So what happens for the rest of the winter?
So we've reached our rest stop here in the little town of Creemore, just another half hour to go before we get to our final destination, Blue Mountain. Getting back to our international travels, fortunately, our next destination did help warm us up. We went to Turkey and we spent a month in Istanbul, and then we headed to the warmest place that we could find, the Turquoise coast.
So we love hiking, and we had heard of this incredible 500-kilometer trail called the Lycian Way. This path covers a huge stretch of Turkey's coast with many little towns and villages along the way. So we weren't going to do the whole hike, but we could certainly tackle a few of the segments.
But which segments? Where were they? How did we get there? And where could we stay? It's not like we could just show up and start hiking. We needed transportation in and out of the area, accommodations, food, hiking maps.
In the end, we got our epic moment at the viewpoint that the trail is famous for, but we were blown away by how much work it took to get there. And that's just the life that you have as a traveler. We're constantly planning logistics. So for every great travel idea that we have, we need to put in days or more likely even weeks of research.
I mean, just to line up a little getaway here in Ontario, we spent countless hours trying to decide which part of cottage country to go to, poring over the Airbnb listings. You could let us know when we get there whether it was worth the effort.
So if we were more relaxed, spontaneous people, maybe this wouldn't be so difficult. We just see where the cheapest flight goes, we would find an Airbnb, and you just make the best of it. But that's not who we are. We're constantly searching for those special experiences and those equally special Airbnbs. In fact, by our fourth country of Italy, we were still agonizing for days over making the perfect plans. And then we ran straight into this really just minor hitch called a global pandemic, and all of our planning just went out the window. And it was actually at that point that we finally learned to stop planning so far ahead. And one of the reasons our plans are so elaborate and so time consuming to put together is we're always just trying to link up different destinations and doing it far into the future. And we're trying to do it in the most seamless way possible. But once COVID hit, we were actually only able to plan maybe a few weeks out. And honestly, this was a very healthy change for us. So we still traveled through the pandemic, but we could only plan just one move at a time. So we stopped worrying so much about where we were going to be 6 months or 8 months in the future, and we just started to focus on being where we were in the moment.
Of course, our new Zen approach to travel planning doesn't change the one thing that makes our lifestyle the most difficult: our travel days. There are so many reasons why we dread travel days. We have to pack everything up, which is always a lot of work when you've been living someplace for a whole month. We tidy our Airbnb to make sure that we get a good review. And then we're on the move. So today is actually the best possible version of a travel day. We have a car and we've only had to come a couple hours. So normally we have to make our way to the airport, often very early in the morning. We're juggling all our luggage and 2 anxious dogs. And no matter how much practice we have, flying with poodles is never any fun. Then we've landed and we have to do everything in reverse. Make our way to the airport, get set up in our new Airbnb. Our travel days always feel like the longest days in the world. Our recent flight from Malta to Toronto was our worst travel day yet. We flew from Malta to Frankfurt to Montreal to Toronto all in one day. And when we landed, we discovered that our luggage got lost somewhere along the way. Travel days are not our favorite part of nomad life.
But of course, there's a huge payoff for all that work. So on our journey so far, we've traveled to 8 countries despite the pandemic, and we visited 17 cities. So that's a lot of travel and a lot of great experiences.
So in spite of the downsides of nomad living, we've had so many of those perfect moments that we were dreaming. We've hiked the gorgeous coastline of Malta. We explored what seemed like hundreds of waterfalls in Copycat National Park in Croatia. And we hiked the Vikos Gorge in northern Greece.
And of course, those are just the sights. Since it's us, you know that it always comes back to the food. So we tried a student intestine sandwich in Florence, not bad, with some red wine. We had the classic beef stew and gnocchi in a cobblestone alley in Split, Croatia. And of course, we had lots and lots of grilled meat in Greece.
These were all incredible experiences. We never would have had them all in a year if we weren't prepared to put in the work to make it happen. And they were worth it. They were worth all the weeks of research and all the packing and unpacking.
So we basically resigned ourselves to a life of perpetual planning. But we're finding that the more experience that we have with traveling, the easier that it gets, more or less. So we're getting to know our own preferences better, and that helps us make decisions faster. And we've also stopped planning so far ahead. So this really relieves a lot of the pressure that we used to feel to string together 6 or 8 months of just a perfect itinerary.
And we've discovered that it's worth it to spend a little more on travel days for a smoother experience. We pay more for direct flights versus taking a cheaper connection, and we do get a cab from the airport to our Airbnb instead of dragging our luggage on public transit.
I lobbied really hard for that one. So hopefully all of this hasn't scared you off the idea of full-time travel. If you are still keen on being a traveler, the next important topic is choosing a destination. This is always a real challenge for us because we find we have to juggle tourist visas, the cost of transportation in and out of the country, and also the cost of living once you get there. So if you're interested in unpacking all of those details, you can take a look at the next video right here. And if you want to see this amazing place that we're staying in small town Ontario, you can come back next Sunday to take a look.